Hi, and welcome back to another episode of Leadership Lenses, podcast designed for Rosh Yeshiva heads of school, principals, and anyone else who wants to improve and enhance Jewish education. We are thrilled to have with us today two of the leading coaches for heads of school, board chairs, and everything in between in our day school world. Marcy, Balogh, and Cheryl Finkel, both of whom have been in various contexts my own coaches and mentors whom I've learned a tremendous amount from over the year. And I'm thrilled that you both took the time to join us. And I'll note to the audience that I asked the two of you to join us together because of the way that you've partnered and done so much great joint work over the year, which I think which is, I think, a model for everyone. So Marcy and Cheryl, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you, Barry.
So Marcy and Cheryl, our goal is to really pull out from each of your experience things that are crucial for heads of school to know and do when they're working together with their boards and when they're working together with their board chairs in particular. Just a bit of framing, I know for those avid fans and listeners who don't miss an episode, there was an episode, I don't know, about 7 or 8 episodes ago where I used the metaphor of the stages of grief to describe coming around to the idea of having a board relationship. It didn't land, to be honest, exactly as I was hoping. I think it came out and rang to people a little bit more on the grief side than on the relationship side. So I'm going to take a moment to correct that here and say what I was trying to frame then, and I think we'll do a much better job today, is as a head of school, you are in relationship with your board president. You are in some form of partnership with your board president by virtue of your role and their role. And what is the key to our success many times is understanding that, appreciating that, and then figuring out, okay, well, in this relationship, what do I do and what do we do to make it work as successfully as possible for both the head, the president, and the school community as a whole. So thank you for giving me the opportunity to make that little adjustment and an appropriate frame for today. And let me turn it over to you, Cheryl. Maybe you can start us off and talk about what are the must-dos? When a head and a chair are working together, and by the way, if you started with your new, I say chair and president independently, but we're going to try and use president consistently, just for the sake of consistency, this call. Even if you and your president started 6 months or 12 months ago, there's always time to catch up. What are the must-dos at the beginning of a head of school and president partnership?
Well, I think the must-dos, Marcy and I used to give a program called Partners in Leadership. And in a way, we're thinking about how well that held up. I think the core principles of it are the same as they were 18 years ago, which is that you want to base your work on knowledge, shared knowledge of governance. What is governance? What isn't governance? In other words, what is the needed piece of work that the board does for the school? And how do these two key leaders work effectively together to make sure that work gets done in a healthy way, in a way that looks towards the school's long-term future and its health going forward? Right. What is the job of the board? What is the job of the head? How does the board president execute his or her work? How does the head of school execute his or her work? And how do they lead together, since they hold the keys to that power and that responsibility?
Right.
How's so that's very start.
No, I mean, there's a lot there. And what I often do here in these conversations is just underline and highlight some of those key pieces, right? So what Cheryl's talking about, if I'm understanding you correctly, is the structural piece. Right?
Yes.
Everyone needs to know roles and responsibilities. What's mine? What's yours? What's ours? And if we can set that out correctly, and we all have, and that governance is a big fancy word that means decision-making and means leadership. I mean, I know we all three love the Governance as Leadership book that came out of Board Source about 20 years ago. Still good, still being sold. So if you don't have a copy, Governance as Leadership, you can get it on Amazon. Definitely recommended. And that's one key component. the yin to that yang may be the relationship part. So let me throw it over to Marcy and say, governance, structure, we got that. Cheryl noted that. What about that personal side of the relationship partnership?
So I want to play real quickly that if we're doing this, I'm going to add one more piece. So structure, systems, people. So that relationship people work, but let's talk about the systems.
Okay, please.
Systems first. So that means these two key people, and we're talking about a partnership between that president and that head of school, has to be built on time spent in order to get that done. So those are those weekly meetings. Those are those clear understandings of what communication is going to sound like when issues come up. It's the very practical ways that those two people are going to connect. Certainly, I know for Cheryl and I, we really love the relationship work, which comes from that, and maybe is even the basis of that, which really allows for a trusting, curious, engaged relationship.
Okay, so let's talk systems. And I think some people, when they hear systems, think now, computer systems, big databases. What you're talking about is ways of interacting that are set. Somebody today, to clarify, we might call them systems or habits, practices, the things that we do and the ways that we understand. So can I push you to just say a little bit more? You talked about weekly meetings and you talked about clarity of communication. I'll say, in full disclosure, those are two things that I learned from you really directly a number of years ago. Tell us more about what has to happen in each of those for all systems to be running.
So I'll start and I'll throw it to Cheryl. Number one, those meetings most of the time need to be in person. They need to be where we are sitting face to face. They're planned. If something comes up and we have to cancel, they're rescheduled. That work has to be a commitment you make. And we were joking earlier about, what is this? And, we've scared people in the past by talking about it being a marriage. And for some people, that might be a good thing. And for others, it's not. However, whatever that is, if it's a dance, if it's a way of engaging, it is a commitment. And part of that commitment is that face-to-face, agenda-specific time. It's also a lot of clarity on having some early conversations in the arc of this relationship about how we communicate, about what we are looking to achieve, setting out, regardless if it's legacy or hopes for their time together. But it's a powerful partnership. We want to see it really invested in. Cheryl, what specifically?
Well, I will say also that I think facilitation of this the structure and the systems and the relationship makes it easier for most people to get to agreement, because sometimes people will agree in principle. Oh, system sounds good. Structure sounds good. This is your job. This is my job. You read a pamphlet. But the question is, how early can I wake you up in the morning if something comes up?
Those awkward little questions.
Yeah. Right. Are you an early bird or a night owl? Do you prefer text or email? If your your spouse answers the phone, should I insist on talking to you or should I wait till the next day? Like, how do we really manage as the kind of person I am? And sometimes it's a little hard to get to that unless the people are quite bold. And a facilitator can help. So we recommend facilitation of that early dialogue. And also sometimes we like to extract promises. Like, do you promise that when something bothers you, you will bring it up with each other? And what will be the look on your face when you're bringing it up? Like, go look in the mirror. What do you look like when you're bringing up something difficult? And also, when you wish the other person were doing something a little differently, how might you phrase it? Let's practice some words of what we might say to each other. Because adults have difficulty confronting or feeling like they're disciplining or giving negative feedback. This is one of the hardest things to do. So facilitating an opportunity to try it out a little bit is...
And I love that. I love those code words because I think they provide an entry I was working with a board president and head last week where the head said, well, I know when she calls and she says, I have a smallie, there's just a little thing we need to deal with. There's something that needs to be fixed, but like, it's not going to be a major deal. And when she calls and she says, I have a biggie, I need to sit down.
I love that.
Because they'd agreed on words, they could say it. And where heads and presidents don't do this, you see the head saying, like, they said this, but I don't know if it's really important. Like, I'd have to move heaven and earth to do this. And if I knew it was super important to our partnership and to our relationship, I would do it. But I just don't know. And I don't know how I would know. So those kind of key words, I think, are a huge and undervalued part of how we work together.
We also could have people just start with giving positives as well. It's interesting to me when heads of school tell me that the board president hasn't really said anything positive, noticed and been specific about what they like. And one of the questions often is, have you told the board president what you've noticed and what you've liked? We can build on positives. It again gives us the bank of opportunity then when there's something that isn't as positive.
Right. And it's another way that makes us vulnerable, right? Giving somebody negative feedback can make us vulnerable. I know that we probably all address this in our work. Our tendency as humans is to then cover that vulnerability with anger. So we can get mad at someone and criticize them, which is not a good plan, but it makes it much easier. If we want to give someone a true, meaningful compliment, there's no cover for that, and there's vulnerability inherent in that, which can be really scary for people at the same time as it's really necessary for their work together.
You know, Barry, you said something before about a smallie and a biggie, and it reminded me that a good relationship will be enjoyable. That you'll have a feeling particularly at the end of the 2, 3, 4 years, however long you can get a good one to stay with you, that you really did good work together and you supported each other and enjoyed each other. And that is the result of doing great work. You'll come out of a difficult meeting. On the way to the car, you'll say, we did it. We got through. We got that passed. You know, good thing we put it at the end of the meeting, right, when they were tired and they passed it. Or whatever you did together, you'll be proud of the contribution that you're making in doing good work. That's the result of this kind of development.
And if you have a joint failure, you'll have a joint failure. Not, I would have done better and you messed that up, or you would have done, just, we went in, we swung for the fences, and this wasn't our day, but we can still, go grab a drink or a cup of coffee or whatever it is together afterwards because we've built this connection.
We cry together, too.
We laughed, we cried. Yep, all of it.
I'm sure in the past few years, there's been a lot of that, laughter and tears. People have gone through COVID. I haven't been a head of school for quite a long time. People have gone through COVID. All of us have been so touched by the challenges of the COVID years, the last 2 years since October 7th. Our hearts have been broken. So people have, the relationship probably is more challenging than ever and more needed, the strong relationship. You need you need two people of character who can stand up to difficult challenges and feel that they can support each other through them.
I want to reiterate what Cheryl just said there. I think it is the primary relationship. And if it works, and when it works, and it works most of the time, it is really what allows for schools to grow, to thrive, heads of school to grow, to thrive. And that's more important today than ever.
I want to say one other thing about that. I think we have to, the board president and the head of school, encourage each other in the sense of giving each other courage based on what you just said.
Okay, I love that. I'm going to say that again. And I've never thought of even the word that way. A board president and head encourage each other, meaning they give each other courage, and they're both doing difficult things. Right? Difficult things for which there's always an easier way. You cannot give that feedback. You cannot deal with that difficult board member. You cannot take on the new fundraising challenge or the new capital campaign. There's always ways out, and the board chair and the head are there to give one another courage in how they deal with all of those areas.
Yeah, I learned that from lay people in Atlanta. I'll just mention one, Saul Singer of blessed memory, who used to stand up at board meetings, kind of pound on the desk with his South Georgia accent and say, "We've done hard things here before, and we can do them again. So let's not be afraid." In a way, I think the board has to be part of that courage assignment. It's never written in books of governance, but now that I'm thinking about it, it's coming to me this way.
Yeah. Marcy, you look like you're going to chime in. Go ahead.
The concept of brave leadership is one that has been written about in places.
Yes.
I love how you personalized it, though, Cheryl, to the courage that can be shared here, which will then allow for that to happen on behalf of the leadership beyond even the two individuals. We're then talking about the board, obviously the professional leadership at the school, and we're talking about then the community.
Yeah.
Brave leadership's needed.
Now, so I love this for a couple of reasons. Number one, I know we're all fans in various ways of Brene Brown's work, and every one of her books has the word strong in it in the title in some format or other. I have the latest one behind me on the desk waiting to be read. Where does that strength come from? And the idea of it coming from that partnership and from the board as a whole having that strength is, I think, huge. And then part two is I often find young heads asking me, like, or kind of assuming, what is the board doing here? They're like, I got this great job to run a school, and I've got this board thing that's hanging around. I don't entirely know why they're here. And the truth is, the board is there to function at a level of leadership that you have to rise to as a head. It's part of your challenge in moving from, let's say, being a principal to a head of school. And we've talked about generative leadership. It's part of that great Governance as Leadership book that we mentioned before. But you can also talk about the board as spearheading courageous leadership, because the board holds the school in trust on behalf of the community.
Right.
The community may not always be willing to take a risk, and the board therefore has to lead. Ron Heifetz and Marty Linsky in Adaptive Leadership define leadership as the art of dishing out loss at the rate that your people can handle, which I love as just like a reality check of leadership. But that's where, when the board's thinking about that and pushing forward on whatever new strategic area the school's looking towards, it's the board that has to take that courageous step to lead the community forward.
However, I want to go back to the beginning of what you said there, Barry. If a new head is coming in and saying, what is the board there and how is it? That's the responsibility of the head to become educated, informed, knowledgeable, and actually goes back to that giving of time in that relationship. So I believe every head of school needs to be an expert on understanding governance, knowing what their role is, and giving the time that it takes. I had a funny client many years ago. Well, I should reframe that. They weren't funny, but the situation was rather funny. Who took on a new role. And when I asked her about it, how she was going to actually practice it, she said, "Oh, I have no more time. I don't have any time for it." And it was this wonderful moment. And I'd say the same thing to heads of school. It takes time. And we could maybe play out today what percentage of time, but it takes in the 20%, maybe 30% of a head's time to do good partnering with their board president and with the board. And that's a lot of time. Is started by understanding clearly the roles and understanding what the benefits are when that works.
There's one other thing that I just want to say about this too, which is to be courageous and brave and to take the time and learn the role where you're both leading in all the aspects of the school, but particularly in governance. I think the board chair, board president, and the head of school also have to protect each other and have each other's back, because schools are environments where complaints come. They're human environments where people make mistakes, and sometimes the complaints are justified, and we need to hear them and take it on the chin, as my mother would have said. So The question is, we had this in our old top tips. You have to share information about when you're going to be criticized. No secrets, no surprises. Don't let one get thrown under the bus and the other not. You have to hold hands in the face of criticism. Otherwise, you can't be brave if you're being attacked all the time.
Right.
Or
And by the way,
you have to be attacked and be brave, I guess is more true.
I want to tie the two things we were talking about together and say, yes, that's all true. And the only way to get there is by putting the time into that relationship. So what we're saying, as Marcy just said, is the head and the board is not the board and the president of the board are not an add-on to your role as a head of school.
Right.
They are a core piece of your leadership. They're what enable you to take your leadership to that communal, generative level and move the school forward. So investing the time, the emotional energy in building those relationships then gets you to a point where your, helpful coach Cheryl says, you guys got to hold hands and take this on together. And you're both thinking, okay, we can do that. Not, who is this person? I've just barely met them.
Absolutely. And let's add then that lovely, maybe positive thought here of gratitude. The board president is a volunteer. Those trustees are volunteers. And they are giving so much of themselves, of their expertise, of their leadership, of their money. And we need to be so appreciative. And one of the ways that we can in a partnership be appreciative is by doing what it takes to keep that relationship strong.
Right. In any of our close relationships, you maintain the relationship by showing up. You show up physically, you show up emotionally, and that's huge, right? Because this isn't a personal relationship the way a typical friendship, marriage, or anything else might be. It is a work-based relationship, but it's a deeper kind of partnership. Yeah. The president, I know we all agree on this, the president is absolutely not the head supervisor. That's a disaster. That cannot be. Even if you have a, fresh off the boat, newly minted head, the president cannot be the supervisor because they have to be the partner. And that's what we need. And so we have to pursue that. And that then becomes the way to unlock performance and leadership and development of the board, the school, the community, the whole package. Yes. Okay. So Cheryl's giving me the high side. Let me wrap up like this. It's perfect timing, actually, because I'll just note, Cheryl and Marcy have given so much to the field and taught so much to the field over years. You've just heard like a little snippet. I know they are still accepting certain clients. If you are looking for someone to help you with your own development as a head, with your development as a president, with your board work, either of them you would be really tremendously fortunate to have them. And we'll have their contact information if you want to reach out to them in the show notes. But in the meantime, what I would encourage everyone to do is try it, right? We've heard from Marcy and from Cheryl, and we've talked about courage, relationship, putting yourself out there in the little ways, like making clear those communication pieces, insisting that you have an orientation conversation, either the two of you or with a facilitator. If you haven't done that yet, now's a great time to start. If you've done it, now's a great time to take it to that next level of building the relationship. Try it out and let us know how it goes. We'll put Marcy and Cheryl's information in the show notes, and you can reach me, as always, Barry Kislowitz on LinkedIn, Leadership Lenses on our Substack, or at kislowitzconsulting.com. Thank you all for being here.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.